My name is Angie Fensel.
Which you've said I know before, but we have to do it again.
Okay.
Now, is this a story about you, your children?
My son.
Your son. And how many children do you have?
I have 5.
5. And
Yes.
how old are they all now?
26, 23, 20, 16, and 12.
And which age child is this?
My 12-year-old son.
Okay, tell us what happened.
Well, to start with, I'm Rh negative. So I got several RhoGAM shots with that pregnancy. I got one at 3 months, I was spotting. I got one at 5 months, I fell in the bathtub. And then
So you fell in the bathtub, that meant you needed another RhoGAM?
Yep.
Where's the logic behind that?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I wasn't spotting. They just thought as a precaution. And then you routinely get one at like 28 weeks if you're Rh negative, just as a precaution.
Where do they actually jab it into you?
In your bottom?
Okay.
Yep.
Sick.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so he was born, and they didn't catch that I was gestational diabetic at the time. So he had a hard time regulating his blood sugar, and that was the same with my previous pregnancy with my daughter, and she was able to regulate her blood sugar in 24 hours, and we were able to go home. For him, it took 5 days. And
did they give him vitamin K, Hep B?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you vaccinated all your
yes,
children? Okay.
all of them, yes. I was a medical assistant, that's what you do.
What do you mean by medical? What exactly did you do?
I worked in pediatrician's office, I worked for OBGYNs, I was a nurse.
Did you give vaccines?
Yes, I did.
To the children?
Yep.
And what did you think about the parents that didn't want to vaccinate in those days?
There wasn't many. And for the most part, you know, as a nurse, I wouldn't see them. If they chose not to vaccinate, you know, the end of the visit, they would leave and I wouldn't see them. So, never really had anyone question it, to be quite honest.
And you believed, as a nurse giving vaccines, you were doing...
Oh yes, absolutely. That's what you do. So, you know, he was born, he had a rough coming in, you know, it was a rough time for him. But he was a very alert baby. Yeah, I have 5 children, so looking back, you know, you kind of put your kids in a category of a baby that is very outgoing and will go to anybody. And then I had a few that were, you know, more reserved and kind of got behind mama's leg and were shy. But he was definitely a baby that would go to anybody, happy all the time, always smiling. He met all of his milestones, had, you know, 20 words at 15 months. So he was very active, very
meanwhile
happy.
You were vaccinating him on
While
schedule.
I was vaccinating him, yes.
Right. So all good?
Yes, except that every time he was vaccinated, there would be a red lump where the vaccine would go in, about the size of a quarter, and it would last until the next time we get the next vaccine. And they always said, oh, that's normal, it's no big deal, you know, he'll be fine. So we did the 12-month vaccines, and about a month or 2 later, he came down with an ear infection, and they decided to put him on penicillin. Well, we found out he was allergic to penicillin, and he had Stevens-Johnson syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It is a reaction to the medication, and his body looked like we poured hot water all over him. It was just this raised red rash and basically blisters.
So he was reacting to penicillin?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So that took about a month for that to heal and to go away. And during that time, we saw some differences with him. He was much more clingy. He wasn't as happy as he was before. You know, when your kids are sick, you let them sleep with you. You'll do things you don't normally do because you're babying them. And so I kind of contributed maybe to I was just being overly motherly, I guess. And then a month later, after we got through the Stevens-Johnson syndrome, he did receive his MMR.
On its own or with other vaccines?
Just the MMR.
Okay.
And it was 2-3 weeks after that, he came down with another ear infection. They put him on Omnicef, which is a close classification to a penicillin. He, within one dose, within 1 hour, he started banging his head and screaming nonstop for about 6 hours. I rushed him to the doctor, and the whole time he was banging his head on my chest. He would not stop through the whole exam. And the doctor looked at me, who was a doctor I had worked for many years. He knew me as a mother, you know. It's just behavioral, you know. Just keep giving it to him. It's behavioral. He's just angry. So that didn't settle well. So I decided, I had a dear friend that had a child that was autistic, and I called her. I had this gut instinct that something was wrong, and I asked her, what do I do? And she said, stop giving him whatever you're giving him, stop, and let's give him some Epsom salts baths, and let's, you know, get rid of everything in his diet, and, you know, chicken and rice, and let's see what happens. So I did that, and progressively from that day forward, he didn't talk anymore. He didn't talk, he didn't give eye contact, he had severe sensory issues. Couldn't give him a bath, couldn't get him in the shower, couldn't cut his hair. He would vomit when we would cut his hair. Couldn't take him anywhere. If a door shut behind him, he would scream nonstop. We got to probably on a daily basis 6 hours of screaming all day long.
So when you took him in that state to a doctor and said, look at my child, what did they say to you?
They just said, you know, it was behavioral, and that, you know, he was going into his terrible twos, and that there wasn't, you know, nothing was related, and he would be fine. And so I kind of stopped taking him to doctors because I never really got the answer I felt comfortable with. So we started investigating and researching, and I came across a Dan doctor, to Defeat Autism Now, and we went a year. At this point he's 2.5. I did see a general practitioner. She had suggested that we go to our children's hospital called Dornbecker's up in Portland and be formally diagnosed. When we went through all the testing, it was an all-day thing where we saw 7-8 different doctors, and they brought us in a room and they sat us down with a therapist, and they basically told us that, you know, he will never speak. You'll be lucky if he's potty trained by the time he's 10. You need to prepare that you will always have to take care of him. And that was what we were told.
They had autism.
They called it PDD, NOS. And because he wasn't 3 yet, they said they couldn't give him the autism diagnosis.
They just make this crap up as they go along.
Yeah. So, but he had, you know, the scores were all low. He had no communications at all. So, you know, during that time, you know, the recommendation was speech therapy. Speech therapy, 20 hours a week. That's basically the only thing Dornbecker's recommended, other than, you know, support groups, those types of things. But 20 hours a week for speech therapy, how do you find 20 hours a week? I mean, it's $200 an hour. I couldn't get 20 hours a week. So, there was a pilot program I went to, it's through OHSU, that taught parents how to do speech therapy in their home. So I took him weekly, and we did that for 3 months, and I learned how to do speech therapy in my home. But at that time, ESD, our Educational Services Department, came in, and they decided, you know, they got him services so that he would have a speech therapist that would come in weekly for an hour that was free. It was early intervention to help us out. So they documented, this was in November of 2008, it was 2008. They documented that he basically had no communication skills, that he was definitely on an autism spectrum disorder. And so we decided to do the gluten-free, dairy-free diet. And within a month, my son had 24 words. 24 words.
It's amazing.
Yes. So we continued to do that. He took about 4 years. 4 years of not only, cleaning the diet. Emotional.
It's okay.
But in cleaning his environment, no bleach, getting rid of chemicals. We realized we did hair analysis. He was toxic in 14 heavy metals. So we started to do detoxification. We did Corella. I didn't want to do like a blood chelating therapy. It was scary to me. So we did it very slowly. We gave him high amounts of zinc. We did 23 supplements a day. We did this for 4 years. And we had an autistic preschool that was near our town. And that was the suggestion, that he go to autistic preschool when he turned 3, because ESD stops coming to your home at that point. And we went for a day, and it just wasn't for us. They were restraining all the kids, and none of them could speak. And at that point, he was starting to talk, and I didn't want him to be the example. I wanted him to have an example. So I went and got my degree online and opened my own preschool in my town. And I did that for 4 years.
Wonderful.
And we took everyone, if they were autistic, we took them, and we worked with the ESD. They came to our preschool, and they did therapy after school for the kids that needed it. And he caught up in speech by the time he was in kindergarten. We held him back 1 year, so he didn't start on time. He started a year later. And now he went from 4th grade to 6th grade this year. And he's 12, and he has absolutely no symptoms. None.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
Yep, he's amazing.
You're amazing. How does it make you feel with all your training as a nurse, with what potentially is you've been lied to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Doctors just kind of do what we do. They do what they're told. I watch pharmaceutical reps come in, and I watch them, give the information, and they wine and dine them, and they give them a pamphlet, and they ask them questions, and they highlight whatever they ask, and that's basically the information they get. I have never seen them sit and read a complete pamphlet. And, when you've seen a pharmaceutical rep that week, that's the prescription you're prescribing for the week, because that's what's in your mind. I just, I don't blame them, so to speak. I just don't think they're informed. And I think that, all the pharmaceutical companies are, that's what funds their schooling. That's what they're taught. They don't know any different. So,
are you ever going to go back to that profession again?
No, I can't. I can't. No, I made that decision a long time ago that I just can't do it. To inject that into anyone, I would end up fired because I would be telling them, I don't think this is a good idea. So,
would you ever, after the experience you've been through, let a vaccine pass yourself or any members of the family?
No, absolutely not. I have a grandson now, and it's the hardest thing. It's hard for my daughter to advocate. It's hard for her to tell a doctor, even with our history. We've shared the history. My son has a medical exemption now. They still push it. They won't let it go. And, she's been threatened that if you don't have your son vaccinated by the time he's 3, we will no longer see you. So, that's okay. We'll find another doctor then. So.